Welcome to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is Dr. Deb Butler, Master Life and Weight Coach, and as always, your coach. Today is episode number 230. Stay tuned. Hi, all my dear friends. How are you today? Oh my gosh, we're almost into September. I can hardly believe it. Can you? How has your summer been? I have really had such a good summer, even though I haven't gone on vacation. I've learned how to create a staycation, which I've been talking a lot about this summer. And I've had a lot of my clients who I've been coaching talk about how meaningful it's been to them, that they've done the same thing that I did, that they weren't going anywhere, so they weren't taking any time off, and they weren't giving their brains time to breathe, and they weren't giving their bodies time to just relax. They were in the go, 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 go mode. And they said that just listening to me talk about this really helped them tune into their bodies, because I think I'm pretty in tune to my body. And if I can totally lose touch with it, which I totally did, I mean, by the time I decided the first time that I needed to take a break, my body, its discomfort level was probably at like a -6 or a -7, which is really, really strong. It is your body screaming, give me a break. And it took me a while to really connect into it. And so I want you to know, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you too. So just be aware that becoming a body whisperer isn't just about physical hunger. It's also about the whole physicality of your body, of what your body is saying to you, either emotionally or through pain or through being tired or fatigued, that your body is always talking to you. And if you think about it in terms of numbers, you still want to kind of go with those whispers. You know, the whisper of hunger at a -2, the whisper of fatigue at a -2, the whisper of pain at a -2, because it is the best way to be able to take care of yourself. Which leads me into what I want to talk about today a bit, because as you all know, I have an ongoing group right now, and we're in the middle of talking about urges. And one of the things that I decided to teach on in this class was from Pema Chodron's book, Taking the Leap. And it's so interesting because I have read this book so many times. It's part of the book recommendations that I'm using in my class right now. And I know I've done like 3 podcasts on urges on it, maybe 2 years ago. And I thought, you know what? I need to refresh your brain and my class's brain about the Buddhist philosophy about urges. Because, you know, sometimes I think, hey, I'm inventing this. I'm talking about urges and I'm telling you how it's emotional hunger and I'm telling you how you can rate it and I'm telling you how you have to allow those urges and how you have to be able to sit through them. But you know what? In the Buddhist philosophy, this has been going on for eons, that they've been trying to help human beings be able to manage their minds better with, you could call it urges or you could call it discomfort with anything. What we as human beings tend to do when we're uncomfortable is we tend to want to leave it. We just want to leave it. And the Buddhist philosophy is all about learning how to stay and all about meditation. And in Pema's book on Taking the Leap, she takes it a step further to talk about what discomfort has to teach us. And she just uses a different word for urges and discomfort. She calls it Shenpa. And Shenpa basically is what she calls is just being attached or becoming hooked. Becoming hooked means that we're feeling uncomfortable. We feel that discomfort and we immediately get hooked, and we either go down some crazy rabbit hole with our thoughts, like we go into the future and imagine something terrible happening. We're off to the races because we were hooked maybe by a certain situation and we started thinking something, and before we knew it, we were off in panic somewhere. Or for instance, when it comes to urges, we see a cookie and immediately our brain says something as simple as, I want it. And before you know it, our hands are in the cookie jar and our hands are putting it in our mouth. And before we know it, we say, what happened? Right? Because we went down the rabbit hole. We got attached. We got hooked to the wanting it. And before we knew it, 3 or 4 or 5 cookies are in our mouth. She is saying that is all the exact same thing of Shenpa. Once you get hooked, you're attached and you end up doing something that's not mindful. You're not really paying attention because you're wanting to leave. And this book is all about teaching you to stay. And of course, in the Buddhist philosophy, one of their biggest tools is meditation, which is something I've talked a lot about in many podcasts. This is not the focus of this podcast, but I do want to say that meditation itself is the best tool for teaching your mind how to stay anywhere, right? Because when you're meditating, basically what you're doing is you're just watching your thoughts and then bringing yourself back to your breath, to a mantra, but you're bringing yourself back to the present moment, no matter what it is, and learning how to stay in it. So I want to use this, and I want to use this term Shenpa, and I want to relate it to urges for you and talk about in the book how you can use this. She uses an analogy in the book that I'm actually going to read to you because I think it's so helpful. And I used it in my class because right now we're talking a lot about how we're learning how to allow urges. And I'm using this analogy in the book to teach my students about it. And of course, anything that I'm teaching my students or my clients, I want to pass on to you too in this podcast to help you do the same thing. So in the book, in the 2nd or 3rd chapter, I want to actually read to you what she writes, what she learned about from one of her teachers, an analogy that she uses for urges, for Shenpa, for wanting to do something that's not going to take you anywhere you want to go. Please listen and see if you can relate this to your urges. She goes on to say, but for sure we need tremendous encouragement and some practical advice for how to stay right here and open to ourselves and to our life. It's definitely not our habitual response to stay. Buddhist teachers, and she names the Buddhist teachers, which I can't even pronounce and it doesn't matter, but her Buddhist teachers both used a helpful analogy to describe the challenge of staying present to life's discomfort. And for this, I want you all to relate to when she's talking about life's discomfort. It could be anything, but for now, I want you to think about it as an urge. They said that we humans are like children who have a bad case of poison ivy. Because we want to relieve the discomfort, we automatically scratch, and it seems like a perfectly sane thing to do. In the face of anything we don't like, we automatically try to escape. In other words, scratching is our habitual way of trying to get away, trying to escape our fundamental discomfort, the fundamental itch of restlessness and insecurity, or that very uneasy feeling that something bad is going to happen. We don't know yet that when we scratch, the poison ivy spreads. Pretty soon we're scratching all over our body, and rather than finding relief, we find that our discomfort is escalating. In this analogy, the child is taken to the doctor to be given a prescription. This is equivalent to meeting a spiritual guide, to beginning the practice of meditation. And I want to interject in this, or to finding a teacher such as myself who teaches how to create inner peace by handling urges. But we describe it learning as to how to stay with the itch and the urge to scratch without scratching. With meditation, we train in settling down with whatever we're feeling, including the addictive urge to scratch, the addictive urge to avoid discomfort at any cost. We train in just staying present, open, and awake no matter what's going on. Left to our own devices, however, we'll scratch forever, seeking the relief we never find. But the doctor gives us wise advice. You have a bad case of poison ivy. It's definitely curable, but you're going to have to follow some straightforward instructions. If you keep scratching, the itch will get much worse. That's for sure. So apply this medicine and it will help you stop. In this way, your misery will start to lessen and eventually cease. If the child has enough love for himself or herself and wants to heal, that unhappy child will follow the doctor's instructions. He or she will see the obvious logic of the doctor's words and go through the short-term discomfort of feeling an itch without scratching. And then gradually the child will reap the benefit. It isn't the doctor or anyone else who gets rewarded. It's you as you find that the rash starts to get better and the urge to scratch gradually goes away. And many of us know, particularly those of us who have had strong addictions, it can take a very long time to learn to be with the itch. Nevertheless, it's the only way. If we keep scratching, not only does the itch get worse, but we find ourselves more and more in hell. Our lives become more out of control and uncomfortable. The three classic styles of looking for relief in the wrong places are pleasure-seeking, numbing out, and using aggression. We either zone out or we grasp. Or perhaps we develop the style of scratching in which we obsess and we rage about other people or indulge in self-hatred. So I really want you to think about with yourself that your urge to want to eat something is like poison ivy, and that what you want to do is scratch the heck out of it. What you want to do when you have this urge to want to eat a cookie or drink a glass of wine and it's really strong, like a -7 or a -8, you want to itch the heck out of it. But think of it and liken it to poison ivy. If you keep doing that, if you keep itching it, it spreads and it gets worse, which really is what has happened to many of us, is that it has spread and it has gotten worse and we keep wanting to itch it. And what I'm offering to you into this podcast today is to use it as a metaphor for yourself, that the only way to heal from these urges is to be able to stay with these urges. Meditation is a wonderful technique for teaching you how to stay with discomfort over time. But as I'm talking to you right now, if you've never meditated a day in your life, I know that you have urges that you can practice with. And I want you to think of it next time that you want something that you would rather not be eating or drinking. So I see this a lot in the students in my class. If they're wanting to drink wine less or they're wanting to eat less at nighttime, it's because that's when the poison ivy is the worst. It's when the scratch is the worst. If you keep scratching it, it continues. So if you've been doing nighttime eating for 20 and 30 years, you got a bad case of poison ivy. The only way to heal, if I were your doctor, I am a doctor. So my advice to you is now to be able to learn how to sit with it in order to heal it. And the medicine for that is my teaching, that you become aware of this, that you teach yourself how to sit. You start with easy discomfort first. So I talk about urges as being emotional hunger, and emotional hunger can go from 0 to -10. You learn to sit with the lighter scratches first, the ones that aren't oozing so much, right? And when you feel those scratches or that urge, and maybe it's just a -2 or a -3, those will be the ones that you can stop itching first. And it strengthens you. Well, if I don't have to itch that, then the next time there's a stronger itch, you may be able to sit through that too. And the beauty of not scratching, the beauty of not giving in to these urges is that you heal. And it may take a while, but know that you can heal from that, and that the healing is in the staying with the discomfort. Think of it as a way to heal. Think of it as a way to lose weight, right? If you have extra weight on your body, it's because you've been itching instead of healing. I love this analogy. I really want you to think about this. And she gives a technique other than meditation. She gives you another technique for how to sit or how to stay with Shenpa or with urges. And it's 3 simple steps. Number 1, you acknowledge that you're hooked. It will be much easier to acknowledge it if you're at a -2 or 3. Oh, that's an urge. At a -9, sometimes it's in your mouth before you know it, but always know that you've made a decision to put it in there. It's just itches so bad and it's so uncomfortable, you don't want to acknowledge it. But the first step is acknowledging it. Acknowledge it first at your lower negative numbers and then move on up. Once you acknowledge it, once you realize that you're hooked, then you pause and you just take 3 deep breaths. One thing we know in almost any science, any philosophy, is that being able to breathe deeply changes our states. So to be able to sit with the urge and pause and take 3 deep breaths, and that once you've taken your 3 deep breaths, Pema's advice then is to just move on. You don't dramatize it. You don't have a party. You don't get excited. You just move on to the next thing. I just want you to think about that as you go through your week, about urges, itches, and poison ivy, and that this has been around for eons. Always the human mind wanting to get away from discomfort. And really, the beauty of being able to live as a human being in life is to be able to sit with discomfort. And that's what I really want you to practice this week. That's exactly what we're doing in our class right now, is we're learning to sit with this. And I'm also using some other different tools that I use only with my clients and in my classes, where we start working with the experiment of taking flour and sugar out, not to change your way of eating forever, but to help you decrease your urges. Because one thing we know is flour and sugar increases urges, makes the poison ivy worse. And one thing we know is that if we're not eating flour and sugar, it is like medicine to these urges and to these itches. So I want you really to think about that. I know all of my students and clients are, and now I know that you are too. And just so you know, my new class, I will be having a new class that will be opening up again at the end of September. And we have a wait list for it now. So if you're interested in being in this new group that will be opening up, all you need to do is go to drdebbutler.com/wait. If you would like to learn how to work more with your urges and how to learn how to sit with discomfort, that's what all of this is about. It's what my Thinner Peace program is about, how to create peace from the inside out. And you know what I'm going to say to you, as I always do. No matter what else you do in this next week, please, please, please be very, very kind to yourself. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
To get a free copy of Dr. Deb's companion workbook with all the tools, homeworks, and discussions that she uses in her podcast with all of her private clients, please go to drdebbutler.com/change. This will make it even easier to follow along with her in future broadcasts.